Kang Bok-gu moved through life like a man already At 28, he was a formidable K1 fighter, lean muscle, lightning reflexes, fists that could end a match in seconds. Yet he had never once fought to win. Victory brought spotlights, interviews, and questions about his past. He preferred the shadows, the dim, sweat-soaked gym on the outskirts of Seoul, where the only sounds were grunts and the slap of gloves on heavy backs. He lived in a modest 2-story house with Handa Young, the woman who had once pulled him from the flames of a burning building when they were teenagers. That fire had changed everything. Dae-jung, with her kind eyes and quiet strength, had suffered severe burns to her face and arms while dragging him to safety. The scars remained pale and jagged, a map of her sacrifice. Bok-gu carried the guilt like chains around his heart. He wasn't in love with her, he had never felt that wild, consuming fire for anyone, but he owed her his life. So he stayed. He cooked simple meals, repaired the leaking roof, and promised himself he would marry her one day, giving her the stable, ordinary life she deserved. His older brother, Kang Min-ju, had been the one bright constant in their fractured childhood. Orphaned young and shuffled through foster homes, the two brothers had clung to each other. Min-ju was the gentle one, soft-spoken, hopeful, always protecting Bok-gu from the world's sharper edges. They had drifted apart as adults, but recently reconnected. Min-ju had fallen deeply in love with a girl from his past, a bright-eyed young woman whose dreams of acting had begun to bloom. Then the call came. Bok-gu arrived at the hospital to find his brother in a vegetative state, the result of a fall from a high rooftop. Not an accident, not suicide in the clean sense. Min-ju had walked off the edge in a haze of despair after learning that the woman he loved, Cha Eun-seok, had seemingly abandoned him for her rising stardom. Messages had gone unanswered, promises broken. The pain had hollowed him out until nothing remained but the long drop. Bok-gu stood frozen by the bedside, staring at the machines beeping in rhythm with Min-ju's shallow breaths. His fists clenched so tightly that blood welled under his nails. "Yo, who did this to you?" The answer came in fragments from hospital staff and old letters. Cha Eun-seok, now a celebrated actress, whose face graced billboards and magazine covers. The girl Min-ju had loved had become a star, and in doing so, had crushed his gentle heart. That night, under the cold Seoul sky, Bok-gu made a vow. Revenge wasn't a fleeting thought, it became his reason to breathe. He would find her. He would get close enough to break her the way she had broken his brother. Seduce her. Make her fall desperately in love. Then abandon her to the same emptiness. ***, he didn't know yet how dangerous that plan would become. Seok's world was a glittering prison of lights and expectations. At 26, she was one of Korea's most sought-after actresses, elegant on red carpets, vulnerable on screen, always performing. Behind the flawless makeup and designer dresses lay exhaustion. Her family had pushed her into entertainment after her mother's early death, treating her career as a financial lifeline and status symbol. Her father and relatives constantly reminded her of the sacrifices made for her, while managers and sponsors pulled strings. She had loved once, deeply and purely. Kang Min-ju had been her anchor years ago, kind, understanding. The only person who saw the real her beneath the aspiring actress. But life had intervened. Missed calls, intercepted messages, family pressure to marry well, and the dizzying pace of auditions and shoots. They had lost touch in a storm of misunderstandings. She had searched for him afterward, guilt lingering like a shadow. But fame had swallowed her whole. When her agency announced a new private bodyguard to handle obsessive fans and aggressive paparazzi, Eun-seok barely glanced at the file. Kang Bok-gu looked rough, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing eyes and a fighter's stance. He spoke in short, clipped sentences, and moved with predatory grace. What she didn't know was that Bok-gu had pulled strings to land the job. He had studied her schedule, her vulnerabilities, her public image. "I'll make you love me," he thought coldly, as he stood outside her luxury apartment for the first shift. "Then I'll leave you shattered." At first, hatred fueled him easily. Watching her smile for cameras, sign autographs with that warm, genuine light in her eyes, he saw only Min-ju's lifeless form. Poison in a pretty package. he muttered to himself during long drives after filming. But closeness eroded the edges of his resolve. Late nights after exhausting shoots, when she slumped in the back seat, makeup smudged, she spoke to him not as staff, but as a person. "Sometimes I wonder if anyone sees me when the lights go off," she confessed one rainy evening, staring out at blurred city lights. Bok-gu remained silent, but her words lodged in his chest like splinters. Dayoung waited at home with quiet meals and hopeful glances, her scarred face a constant reminder of duty. Yet when Eun-seok noticed a bruise on his knuckles from a sparring session, and gently asked, "Who protects you?" Bok-gu-SSI. Something inside him shifted. He reminded himself of the plan every night. This was temporary. This was revenge. The lines blurred slowly. Then all at once Bok-gu's hot and cold demeanor confused Eun-seok at first. One moment he was distant and professional. The next he shielded her from aggressive fan with fierce protectiveness that felt almost personal. Stolen moments accumulated. A late-night convenience store run where they shared cheap ramen under fluorescent lights, laughing at nothing. A quiet car ride where he played an old song that reminded her of simpler times. He told himself it was all calculated. Make her trust him, make her vulnerable. But when she opened up about her regrets, about the love she had lost years ago without knowing the full story, his hatred began to twist into something far more treacherous. Genuine longing. Eun-seok, for her part, found herself drawn to his raw intensity. Unlike the polished actors and wealthy suitors her family paraded, especially the persistent Kim Jun-sung, a rich heir her relatives favored for image and connections, Bok-gu was real. Rough, guarded, but honest in his silences. He didn't flatter her. He saw through the celebrity mask. One stormy night, after a particularly brutal day on set, involving emotional scenes that dredged up old wounds, Eun-seok broke down in the car. "I feel so alone sometimes," she whispered. "Like no one stays." Bok-gu pulled over. Rain hammered the windows. Without thinking, he reached out, wiping a tear from her cheek with a calloused thumb. The touch lingered. She leaned in first, her lips brushing his in a tentative kiss that quickly deepened with years of unspoken pain on both sides. "I shouldn't," he murmured against her mouth. But his hands betrayed him, pulling her closer. Dayoung sensed the change immediately. When Bok-gu came home smelling faintly of another woman's perfume, her jealousy flared beneath her quiet exterior. "Is the job still just a job?" she asked, touching her scarred cheek self-consciously. Bok-gu lied, as he had to. "It'll be over soon." But the fire had ignited, and it was consuming him from within. Secrets are fragile things, and theirs began to fracture under pressure. Eun-seok started noticing inconsistencies, Bok-gu's unexplained absences, his sudden bursts of cold cruelty followed by overwhelming tenderness. She discovered bits of his past, the underground fights where he deliberately held back from winning, his fierce loyalty to a brother she didn't yet connect to her own history. Misunderstandings piled up. Jun-sung, sensing competition, used his influence to create rumors and pressure her family, who urged her to distance herself from the low-class bodyguard. Bok-gu, torn between revenge and real emotion, pushed her away with harsh words designed to wound. "You're just like every other star, using people until they're empty." Yet he couldn't stay away. When she fell ill from overwork and stress, he stayed by her side, holding her hand through fevered nightmares, where she called out names from her past. The breaking point came during a visit to the hospital on Minju's birthday. Bok-gu and Daejeong went together, as they often did. Eun-seok, unaware at first, crossed paths with them in the corridor. The air thickened with unspoken truths. Minju, in a rare moment of semi-consciousness, stirred at the sound of familiar voices. His eyes fluttered, murmuring fragments that hinted at the old connection. Bok-gu's guilt roared back like a storm. He tried to end everything that night, confessing half-truths that left Eun-seok reeling. "I never cared. This was all a game." She didn't fully believe him. Through tears, she said, "I know you're carrying something heavy, but my heart chose you anyway." Daejeong watched from the sidelines, her quiet love turning to quiet devastation. She had sacrificed her beauty, her future dreams, For this man, and now, he was slipping away toward the very woman who had unknowingly caused so much pain. They both understood the impossibility by then. Society would never accept them. Guilt over Min Ji-woo's condition, family opposition, industry scandals, and the shadow of past misunderstandings formed an unbreakable barrier. Their love was forbidden, doomed from the start, like a flame that burns brightest just before it dies. But love doesn't surrender easily. Bok-gu proposed one final day. Just today, he said, voice raw. No past, no tomorrow. Just us. Eun-seok agreed, eyes shining with bittersweet hope. They stole those golden hours from a world that refused them. They wandered Seoul's hidden alleys, eating warm tteokbokki from street vendors, laughing like carefree teenagers. They rode the Ferris wheel at an old amusement park, hands intertwined, watching the city lights sparkle below. In a quiet arcade, they danced to tinny music, forgetting cameras and scars and comas. Later, in a small, unassuming motel, away from prying eyes, they made love with desperate tenderness, whispers of "I love you" that carried the weight of forever in a single day. Bok-gu traced the lines of her face as if memorizing every detail. Eun-seok clung to him, knowing dawn would bring separation. For those precious hours, the guilt lifted. Bok-gu smiled freely, the first real smile in years. Eun-seok laughed without reservation, her star persona gone. As the sun rose, reality crashed back. They stood on a bridge overlooking the Han River, wind whipping around them. "This is goodbye," Bok-gu said, throat tight. She nodded, tears streaming. "I know, but thank you for making me feel alive." They parted without looking back. Hearts already breaking, winter descended with merciless cold. Eun-seok, shattered by the separation and overwhelmed by old traumas resurfacing, wandered aimlessly. Her health deteriorated, exhaustion, emotional collapse, and the weight of unspoken truths left her fragile. One snowy night, she collapsed in a remote, wooded area outside the city. Half frozen, still whispering Bok-gu's name into the wind, he found her. Somehow, through some instinctive pull, Bok-gu tracked her down. He carried her through the deepening snow, his own strength failing under the storm and the burden of regret. Every step reminded him of Daejung's scars, of Min Ji-woo's empty eyes, of the love he had never meant to feel. Exhausted, he collapsed beside her in a quiet, snow-blanketed clearing. He pulled her close, using his body as a shield against the freezing wind. "I'm sorry," he whispered, lips against her hair. "For everything. I hated you. And then I loved you more than I thought possible, truly." In his final moments, the revenge dissolved. Only the love remained pure, intense, and fatal. They were discovered together the next morning, locked in an eternal embrace. Bodies preserved by the snow like two souls who had finally found peace. Dae-jung visited their graves months later, placing flowers with trembling hands. Her scars had faded slightly with time, but the wound in her heart lingered. She whispered a quiet release, "Go freely now. I loved you enough to let you go." Some loves are too fierce for this world. They demand everything, heart, soul, and finally, life itself, and in taking it all, they bind to people forever beyond the barriers of guilt, revenge, and fate. Epilogue. Years passed. Min Ji remained in his quiet state, but those closest to him believed he somehow knew the truth, and found a measure of peace. Jun-sung moved on, as did the industry that had once consumed Eun-seok. In the end, the story of Kang Bok-gu and Cha Eun-seok became a whispered legend among those who remembered, a tragic tale of a love so powerful it could only kill to complete itself.